My name is Rossie Stone, and I'm the founder of Dekko Comics, and I do these great dyslexia workshops with Paul McNeil. So the idea behind the workshops was mainly to demonstrate to children and to teachers that there's a lot of people out there with dyslexia, and it's a lot more common than people realize. These workshops were to help make people aware of that and feel more positively about dyslexia if they had it, but also to give them coping strategies in a way in which they embrace their dyslexia rather than saw it as a burden. The aims of the workshop are to inspire children to come up with their own solutions to, be it their dyslexia or whatever difficulty they have in class, and to come up with something that inspires them, come up with a fun solution in the form of a superhero that inspires them to tackle those difficulties next time they have it in class. But it's also to broaden the understanding of dyslexia and the empathy of dyslexia throughout the class and for the teachers as well. And so I suppose it's to encourage a creative way of looking at that, which not only helps you brainstorm ways in which you can inspire yourself to overcome those difficulties, but also gives you confidence, feeling that it's okay to have dyslexia, feeling that it's kind of like a little superpower in its sense if you utilize it right. So it starts off with Paul and me introducing ourselves, then Paul takes them away into this fun talk about what dyslexia is and how it relates to his life, and he shows them some examples of successful celebrities from all different walks of life, be it football, sports, the movie industry and so on. And then he reveals after each one that they have dyslexia. They're very successful, but he also emphasizes on what they struggled with at school, which of course relates to some of the kids who are sitting in the class. It gets the kids engaging, putting their hands up, doing the back and forth with Paul, while also following into his narrative of this is what dyslexia is, and it doesn't need to be a burden. So after that, we introduce our superheroes that we've made, Persisto, Willforce, and Creatia. And these are three heroes that are based on the strength of dyslexia or abilities that everyone has that you can overcome any difficulty with, even if not especially difficulties that are associated with dyslexia. So Persisto represents your persistence, your determination, and he's represented as this big muscly fighter hero strength is kind of what he represents, and he represents the attitude to keep going at something even if you find it difficult. Willforce represents the ability to encourage, to motivate, to give you willpower and not give up, which is really important. And Creatia has the ability, she represents the creativity, coming up with creative solutions for a problem that you might have. And me and Paul are introducing all of these heroes. We felt it was kind of a good way to sort of treat them like the Avengers, like just having one of them isn't enough, they've all got to work together. Then we introduced Mr. Despicabilia, who is like our villain of the whole thing. He represents all the difficulties of classwork, but mainly dyslexia. Paul conjured this character from the idea of what it feels like when you're struggling with dyslexia in class, like you feel someone stealing the time away from you, or whispering negative words into your ear to make you not believe in yourself, or when the words are floating around in front of you. Some forms of dyslexia have that. He's the one who's jumbling them all up. So he kind of represents that nasty side of dyslexia, or I should say, the nasty feeling you can get when you're struggling with dyslexia. So after we've done the introducing of the characters, I then take children and do the drawing part, where we do a drawing exercise, and between me and Paul, we actually ask the children, what do you find difficult in class? Let's get 5 or 6 difficulties down that we struggle with in class, and kids will suggest things. I'll suggest them. They'll often suggest school subjects, but we try and encourage them to choose just more broad difficulties like concentration or time or reading, things that are more to do with the skill rather than to do with a specific subject. You can do the specific subjects, but we try and encourage the overall skills. And then with me and my drawing pen, and with a big whiteboard, we go through each one, say, for example, words floating around for the reading difficulty. I take that and then I say, okay, how can we make this one into a superpower? We're going to make a superhero. I'm going to draw you guys, with your help, a superhero that can that basically turns all these difficulties into solutions. You know, he can save you from all these difficulties and makes them okay, makes them not so difficult. But we're going to do it through fun superpowers. So, for example, with this difficulty we have with reading and the words floating around, maybe our hero should have an ability that gives him ice vision, that allows him to freeze the words in their place and stop them from floating around, you know. And that's a fun ability. That's a cool ability. You can imagine it on a real superhero, but it's a fun way to sort of imagine, the words are floating around, ice vision, freezes them in place. That's a hero that inspires us to overcome the difficulty of floating words. You can pretend you're that hero. Once we've done that, everyone's had great fun. They've laughed at the drawing, they're enjoyed suggesting their own, and by that point, everyone gets it. The pupils know what they're doing. They know what I'm about to get them to do, and they understand how it works. And so then me and Paul, we basically say, now you're going to be given paper and pens, colored pencils. You can work in teams if you like, or work alone, and you're going to come up with your own either list of difficulties, or you're just going to choose one difficulty. It's up to you, and make your own hero based on overcoming those ones. We do give them the option to make a villain based on those difficulties rather than a hero overcoming them, but usually the hero is the most popular. So then me and Paul will go from table to table and see what the children are up to, give them encouragement, give them ideas. Yes, some kids don't know where to start, but we just sort of like give them ideas, just list off ideas. And we never tell someone that that's a bad drawing or that's a bad idea, because there is no bad idea in this. And this is not a drawing exercise. We're not looking for good drawing. It's all really metaphorical, but you're just drawing upon what inspires them and what they like. And bit by bit, for each scratch of the pencil on their drawing, there's more of a positive vibe about dyslexia, and seeing it more like a sort of cool thing that can be associated with a superhero power, rather than this disability that it's always associated with. Once we do that, me and Paul will choose a few, because we never have time to see everyone, but we'll choose a few. We will get them to talk about them and see the kids enthusiastically talk about the hero and how they overcome the difficulties, and me and Paul will give great feedback for them and encourage them, saying, this is what you've, look at what you managed to do in just 30 minutes. Or imagine if this was a real hero. Hey, would this inspire anyone in the class to overcome their difficulty with reading or spelling? And then people put their hands up, because it is interesting. They're into superheroes, particularly in this day and age where Marvel's such a big thing. So here are some top tips if you are a teacher taking on this workshop and exercise with your class. First of all, remember, it's not a drawing exercise. You do not have to be a good drawer for this. You can do it with PowerPoint images or with stick figures. It's about giving kids the idea of what they can do. And it's the same for the children too. None of this is about how good their drawing is. It's about the ideas they come up with. You can give children the opportunity where they don't even need to draw it. They can act out the superpower or describe it, or some who really aren't comfortable with the drawing can write it down. My second top tip would be to enjoy it. Make sure you're enjoying it too. You know, if you're a fan of superheroes, draw upon the inspirations from heroes that you like if you're a Marvel fan or a Batman fan or a Wonder Woman fan. Enjoy that side of it. Enjoy coming up with all sorts of creative ideas and all sorts of difficulties. Like bullying could be an example of a difficulty in school. In fact, some children who are dyslexic and struggle in class might get bullied for that reason. I'm one of those examples. But coming up with all sorts of creative difficulties that someone might face in class makes it all the more fun to come up with superhero solutions for them. Top tip number 3, I would say, encourage people to work in twos when you can. They don't need to. Some children do prefer to work alone. I would be one of those kids. Just as long as you're giving the option for both, to make people feel as comfortable as they can while doing this exercise, and it brings up the most of their creative potential. And top tip number 4, engage with the class. Right from when you're talking about dyslexia, start off from the standpoint that dyslexia is a difficulty, but it's not something to be ashamed of. I prefer personally not to see it as a disability, but start it from the positive sense of how dyslexia is about having difficulties in class, and this can relate to everyone who's ever found anything difficult in class. Even if it's the top SWAT of the class might have a difficulty with maybe drawing, they might find drawing difficult. So start it from that angle. Start from the angle of this is an exercise about difficulties, and we're going to focus on dyslexia to help you understand it, and to help you understand that dyslexia is just a set of difficulties that certain people have, which always change because dyslexia is such an umbrella term for a lot of different specific difficulties. Do it from that angle where we're addressing everyone's difficulties. And then focus on dyslexia from there, saying, create that empathy. Just remember that it is a little bit of fun with a great, profound benefit. So enjoy it and make sure, if you, the teacher, are enjoying it and having a good time, then the class is more likely to enjoy it as well. That's what me and Paul found. We didn't take ourselves too seriously. We took our message seriously and we took the exercise seriously, but we just had fun with it all. We let kids come up with silly answers. It's a nice bit of freedom for the class, where they have they have a focus of what to do to make a superhero out of difficulties, but you're giving them as much freedom as they like to pursue that task. And that can really help. And because everyone's doing it, it can create a real bridge of empathy between what it's like having dyslexia and what it's like not having dyslexia, but it can help people understand it through this fun superhero exercise.